Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Alex, what do we got?
First one this morning is from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. New iPhone, and now, of course, my fleet of Lightning to HDMI connectors won't work. Recommend a new USB-C to HDMI connector that will work with newer iPhone Pros.
Jason?
One of my favorite things about the newer iPhones is that they are class compliant, USB-C / Thunderbolt, I believe, on the higher ones. And what that means is you can pretty much use absolutely anything. Belkin, if you're looking for specific advice, Belkin does one with a nice power injector. At the end of the day, as long as I'm not going super portable, I actually end up just using the OWC mini dock. I'm just plug it in, and there's my HDMI. Oh, yeah, and Ethernet works too. Class compliance.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, of course you can get the official Apple one. They make a couple different versions. If you need something with power, that's always a good idea to get something that has 2 ports on it. So one could be power, one can be for audio or video or external storage, that kind of thing. The Apple adapters are expensive. I think they're about $40-$50. I've had really good luck with, after getting them from recommendations on the panel, the UNI USB-C to HDMI adapters. They're quite inexpensive. They seem to be of good quality, and I haven't had any failures, and I just keep buying them, and they keep working. So the UNI brand of USB-C to HDMI adapters are what I would suggest looking at.
Yeah, I use the Unis a lot for those things, or Uni or whatever that is there. This is the one that I have on my rig. So you can see this goes into the phone, and then it splits out to, it's going to be hard for me to show it to you here, but I've got 4 connectors there, and one of them is power, and then the other ones are Ethernet, HDMI, and audio. so that's how this one kind of pulls together. One of the things I've been testing to tie this to get all together, and I don't know if I've shown this before, but this is the Neva Duo. This is what this looks like here. This is the audio interface that I'm using. It doesn't have a cord or 20 on it, so I got to figure that out. But this is an $80 solution instead of the really expensive USB Pre 2 $1,100 solution to tie these things together for audio. Obviously, we've been having trouble with the Mix Pre 3 getting it to talk to the phone correctly in the last since 17.6. And we don't know exactly why. But this is a great one as a kind of an all-purpose little hub. The reason I use the hub this way, or I have lots of hubs, but the reason this one specifically is because all of the ports are on the top and this cable is on the bottom, so I can put it into this little clamp effectively with that. And I went through a lot of hubs to get to that. So I would save you the trouble. This is made by Belkin, which is what Jason had suggested a little bit earlier. And it's a good little hub. So anyway, something to think about. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. The panel suggested Vetus and BrightSign software for Kiosk last week. Good answer, but could I possibly build a Kiosk presentation using only Keynote? Is that stupid?
Go ahead, Jason.
Not stupid at all. One of the nice things about modern presentation software is you can actually put buttons and links in there, and it's fairly easy to just take it on an iPad or even a Mac and lock it to one specific application. And, even it will survive a reboot and, can even be set to go back to a known state. So no, it's actually a pretty good way to go.
Yeah, it just really depends on how many features you need. When you talk about the kiosks and a lot of the things that are there and the bells and whistles that you want and how much you need to manage it remotely, how many times you're going to have to update it, what are the feature sets that you need, all of those things come into play. If you're getting a professional level display software, there's a lot of tools there. There are people who know how to use those tools. There are things that, and it is more expensive. So it's kind of a time money kind of thing. As James Haldane suggests in the chat, PowerPoint has a kiosk mode, and so does Keynote. And you can put, as Jason said, buttons in there. So as a let's throw this together kind of thing, it is you definitely could start there. I think that within a year of you starting with Keynote or PowerPoint, you'll end up with a real piece of software that's focused on this, because you're going to want live data feeds. You're going to want, all kinds of other, being able to update it remotely. You're going to be able to, and I think if you go back into some of our older shows, we've gone through some of the screens that were used in the New York in Times Square, and so I think that you might want to look at those, but those are the software that we suggested, I think, last week or the week before. But definitely, you could get started with Keynote, and I think that I've built some simple interactions for people with that, but you're going to grow past it pretty quickly if you're really using it. Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. I'm thinking of migrating my SoundCloud stored music to LANDR. Has anyone had any experience with them? How could I download all my SoundCloud tracks in one go?
I don't know how to do that. I did play with LANDR actually a couple months ago, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know if it's good enough that I would be moving all of my SoundCloud to LANDR. So I don't know if I would take the tack that you're taking. But there wasn't anything wrong. I can't even remember what I was using LANDR for. There was some reason that I needed it, and so I downloaded it. Maybe someone else had something there, but I do recognize it, and I thought it was fine. It didn't stand out as something like this is the best thing since sliced bread. So you have to take a look at it. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. What are some good low-investment home-based production businesses that are actually sustaining and viable from this article?
Go ahead, Jesse.
So first, let's take a look at the article, and then we'll talk about the article. So it gives recommendations on different types of jobs that you could have, that you could work from home, freelance writing, virtual assistant, online tutoring, all of these jobs. First of all, the article seems like it was written by AI, and all the jobs it suggests are about to be devoured by AI if they haven't been already. And the other problem with this article is that every job that it suggests basically boils down to have a significant online following that you can point towards your business, and then you'll do well. So every job on the list is actually building an online following, leading us back to the marrow of office hours. It's community. That's the center of pretty much everything moving forward, is building community and nurturing it.
Yeah, and sometimes that becomes that is being part of a community as well. Like, for office hours, I think definitely was built up. I don't think it would have been possible if I didn't have a following. So when we talk about getting it off the ground, getting some idea off the ground, that required a following to get that going. If I had just gone up online and said, "Hey, I'm going to hang out and talk about production by myself," and I had like 343 followers, this probably would have been a pretty short trip, for as far as how this worked out. But that build up took decades. That was not something that that it can just be turned on. So if you're deciding you want to do something all of a sudden, it takes time to build that up. It also, it takes kind of careful management for the most part. The saying is that trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback, and so you have to be very careful. One thing that I wasn't as careful of in my early days, but I definitely learned to be pretty careful pretty quickly, which is, I kind of stay out of politics in public, and I stay out of, things that I don't have to talk about in public. I think that a lot of people feel like just because they have an opinion, they should put it on Twitter. And I think that, my daughter once said that, fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate. Hate leads to Twitter. I think that you have to be very careful of how you build that following. And I'm not a master of it. I don't have a huge following everywhere, but I think that is something that is important. I will say that it's what you know and who you know. And so that's what I'm looking for most of the time. I'm not trying to accumulate money for the most part. I'm trying to accumulate a network of people that I know. And I don't mean a network of people that are, really famous or anything else, but people that I can trust all over the world. And that's part of what Office Hours provides. And that's what Pixel Corp provided before that. And that's what me being on forums and answering questions did before that, is that you want to build this network. And everything that I've gotten has come from the people that I know and what I know. And so I'm looking for new opportunities to learn things and how to build those out. And so that builds into this idea here. And you just have to think about what you're looking for. I do agree with Jesse that a lot of these tools are going to be made redundant in some cases. I think that the more I'm studying right now a lot of things around education, and the more you look at education, the more you think that AI might be a big part of it. Like it's, and that customized learning and being able to get questions answered very, very quickly is going to be, really good for the testable skills that show up on school tests. Like that's what it's going to be good for. I think there's still a very big role for teachers to create context and to answer questions and have conversation and do a lot of other things. I think it's good for teachers in the long run, the good teachers, because it means that they don't have to do anything over and over again, because there won't be any over and over again, because you're not trying to get 15 kids to all go the same direction at the same time. They're all going to be kind of able to have things respond to them in real time. It's going to be really interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, when I used to do quite a lot of mentoring, I would always tell people that to build a career, the first three things you should think about is content, approach, and network. What do you know? How do you use what you know? And who knows that you know how to use what you know? What's interesting about AI to me is it's starting to reduce, I think, the importance of the first one, which is the content. That much of that content is really accessible now to almost everybody. But it doesn't change whether you can use that content to be productive, and who knows that you can use that content to be productive. And so when I look at these home jobs, I always think about not how do you get the content, because I think the content's everywhere, but how do you apply it? I think the other interesting thing, I was talking to a fairly senior person at an HR position in a fairly large company recently, and they said to me, there was a lot of talk about silent quitting. Well, the back to work is going to cause silent firings, and that they're going to try and reduce the number of employees. And they've been planning this for a number of years now by saying, everybody back to work. If you don't want to come back to work, that's fine. Because I think there's a retraction coming, and this will be a good way to, and they're going to lose some good people. They get that, and for the large companies, that you can plan your way through some of that. So knowing what you can do at home, working out how to use that content may actually be a really useful thing to think through.
Yeah, and there are so many. I think that what I'm always amazed by when you talk to people, like, what do you do? And they have this little niche that they figured out, and they're making, it's not like they're going to raise money on Wall Street for it, but they're making a solid $200,000 or $300,000 a year, kind of managing something that just kind of is cooking along, and they're they're happy, and they're working out of their house, and so I do think that there are lots of things that you can do there. I think that you have to be ready that you're going to have to hustle, and one of the advantages of working for a company is that if you have a slow 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever, there's a little bit of buffer there, as opposed to if you don't do it, then you just don't make rent. So I think that those are things that are more complicated. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, this has started to hit home for me as I'm starting to think about, leaving the company that I started from nothing 15 years ago to make a move to the Bay Area in the next year or two. And like Nigel's three things are exactly it. I'm having to dust off LinkedIn and I've really been spending the last several afternoons, because again, I've had so many, thousands of jobs over the last 15 years. And like you kind of forget all the cool stuff you do. So, to reinvent yourself, to reinvent a resume, you actually have to go back and like really, figure out the things that you think were just kind of, that were just right and were a perfect example of something.
Yeah, and I think that we are going to have a shift. I have friends I had a couple of friends yesterday or over the last 2 or 3 days retire from their companies because they had to return to work, and these are VPs. I was like, wow. So I think that companies really are going to have a hard time being vibrant. I think that I think that they're pulling people back to the office because they think that would somehow build the culture more tightly. It's just because they don't know how to do it any other way. And I think that there's a lot of the out of the box thinkers that do find working in a cattle farm, which is what those cubicles are, to be, I think that it broke the spell when they weren't in it for 2 or 3 years, and now they just can't go back. And I think that your most creative thinkers are the ones that don't want to be there. And I think that it's not that they can't find other people to fill those positions. But I would say that in most companies that I've worked in, no matter how big they are, there's 20 or 30 people that if you pulled them all out at the same time, the company would fold. Like there's, there can be 200,000 employees, but there's 20 or 30 that tie the whole thing together. And if they all decide they don't want to be there, you've got some issues. And as you start to lose some of them, and most of these companies are starting to lose some of them, it pulls out some parts of the nervous system that are much harder to replace than just by HR. So I think that's going to be the challenge that a lot of companies are having as they start to go down that path. As far as working from home, though, I do think that it's there. I think that you do have to figure out, again, how you're going to provide use to a community in a sense that that people want to buy something from you or work with you. I was reading Twitter this morning while I was biking, and someone was saying, it's really hard to become a director of photography right now because all the older ones aren't leaving. Like, we just retire so that we can move in. And the funny thing is, as someone who's worked on a lot of these shows, the hard part with the other thing you have to remember is that there's a certain amount of time, and this is the argument for some return to work or being on site with people. It's really hard to work with a new DOP. Like a lot of us, kind of flinch because they're chaotic. Like they don't understand how to get a whole team to go from one place to the other. And they need the set time. They need to be around people for a decade or two to really understand how. Some don't, but almost all of them do. Like to learn, how a system, works. My brother, got used to. He's an A camera on some pretty big shows, but when he started, he was building everything himself and putting it all together for me. And now he's like, I don't even push record. Like I don't focus. I don't push record. I think he talked about it on our show. He goes, I set my Steadicam down, my rig down, and people put the thing together, and then I do it. But he understands how that whole process works, and I think that's something you have to learn over time. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and there's a reason in production. I mean, I feel like who was it? Adam Sandler, used the same cast of the same crew. I mean, down to the person for 15 years. Kevin Smith did the same thing for all of the Dogma and
there's a lot of directors that'll get into it.
Oh, there are a ton.
Like, I like to work with these folks because they have a rhythm to them, that makes it work. So anyway, I know we've kind of wandered off a little bit, but we've got time today. So a real quick reminder: if you want to ask questions, you can throw those questions into Makana. If you don't know how to get to Makana, you can go to officehours.global/join, and you will see it there. But you can ask questions and vote on those questions, and that matters in this show. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida is asking, how can you avoid age discrimination by editing your LinkedIn profile?
Go, Jason.
I see what you did there. I don't think this is a very good idea, and I'm sure that there is a way to do it. I'm not even sure that LinkedIn knows how old I am. I wouldn't do that even if you figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to – eventually someone's going to figure it out. Like you're going to get into an interview. I'd rather people know up front that this is who I am and what I do, and this is how long I've been doing it. I don't really think about it that way. I mean, I definitely when my last company closed and I spent a little time looking for a job while I was freelancing. And I definitely experienced what you would call age discrimination. As soon as I got on, I could tell that they were not going to hire me because I had white hair. That was going to be the end of that. And I could see it, and so I definitely know what you're talking about. I think that you just have to, and again, this gets back to the network. I don't want to depend on someone finding me on LinkedIn. I think that helps build that relationship. But you want, how I got my next job was someone that I had known for a decade recommended me to one of the friends that they had known for a decade. It really comes down to that. And I think that one of the mistakes that people make is that when they're busy, they don't invest in that network. They don't invest in, when you're busy, you're like, well, I don't need that. And so I don't really want to be part of that, or I don't want to waste time with it, or I don't want to whatever. They don't spend that time. The time that you plant a tree is 20 years before you need it. And so really you want to constantly. The thing that has done very well for me is that I spent a decade not really investing in training or networking or anything else because I was so busy. And I think that made it harder, when I made things turn. Most of the opportunities I've gotten is because I was part of a larger network, and because I was able to, it's not just that I get a job from that network. It's that when I need something, I can call someone. When I need, I have to say that, Jeff Francis made me look really good a couple weeks ago because I was like, told the What's Brock and the Bare Naked Ladies want to do something in the University of South Carolina, and I happen to know someone who not only works there but knows the facility inside and out, and has gear that we can borrow, and has all the other things, and who knows what happens with, who knows what happens in the future with that. For me, it was a good cause. I was with great bands, and I got to hang out with Jeff, and that was enough. With some of the stuff I've shot, it already opened a bunch of other doors, and you don't know what those doors are going to be when you show up. But being able to, have that network and be able to just jump into that is pretty interesting, and I've benefited from office hours over and over and over again. I just need somebody in New York. I just need somebody over here. I just need, what if we did all of this and we can do these crazy ideas? And we're able to do them because I know all of you, and if I, so I think that's the thing that and it's really hard to measure. Like, people always want things to be transactional, and relationships are not transactional. They are something that you grow and nurture over decades, and then they you don't know when that's going to be necessary. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, you were just on the subject of care and feeding of your network, which I think is really important. And I've learned a few things from people around me over the last few years. One of the ones I most like is I have someone I worked with 15 years ago, and once a year he just calls me up and says, "How are you doing? What's happened in the last? Tell me about your last year." And first time it happens to you, you're like, well, what do they want? What do they need? And then you go, wow. And so what I would recommend people do, and don't wait till you're out of a job to do this because it's really hard. Who are the 5 or 6 most influential people, peers, bosses, or something? Just go out and touch somebody every month, literally email them, phone them. Care and feeding your network is absolutely essential. The last 3 or 4 jobs I've had of some significance came out of nowhere because somebody, in fact, it happened to me last week, somebody called me and goes, "Oh, I know someone who knows you and I'd love to talk to you about this opportunity." And that becomes from the care and feeding of your network.
Yeah, 100%. And then the other thing to look at is when you look at people saying, that have said, "I'm leaving," or "I'm now looking for work," or whatever, helping them immediately is big stuff. That is where the good stuff is like someone who's out of a job and you try to find something for them, or recommend something, or give them some tips. That is where the gold is someone who just closed their company, whatever, because they are, they get so committed, to some people who aren't only paying attention to them because of where they are, but paying attention to them by, helping you in that area. And how do you get people to want to do that for you? You're spending time helping other people and being, someone that they wanted to work with. You don't do that for people that you don't care about, or don't want to work with. You do that for people who have been a good partner, and you want them to be a partner somewhere else, and it's just, look for those opportunities. Again, looking for contributing to other people when you're busy and when things are going well, really makes it easier when things aren't. Go ahead, Jesse.
Another thing to consider is, as you age, build towards the job that is appropriate for your age. And I'm going to give you one version, and I'll leave it to you to figure out, how to apply it to your line of work. We work with so much in front of the camera talent and on stage talent, and we watch some of them make the transition from, we've seen some of them made the transition from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60, and gone from performer to producer, and done fantastic as producer as their performer years kind of faded into the over the horizon. And we watched some who've tried to hold on to the performer they were at 20 when they were 40, and it's not age discrimination, or it is if you want to call it that, but build towards the job that is appropriate as you age.
Good, Jason.
And I mean, as Alex was talking about this, I am reminded, I don't know what our total head count was at NAB, but the number of people, myself included, and Alex bankrolled most of it, but for free, the number of people that showed up for a week, came, set up, did, these grueling but very fun days of work, that is community. And that is proof that what he's saying is real.
Well, and looking for an opportunity, I love opportunities for us to do events like, hey, we're going to do something we did with the Verve Pipe, we did like a little, stereo video shoot, spatial shoot for Apple Vision Pro. And Max showed up and Michael Coleman showed up, and the three of us kind of threw this thing together. And it's so much fun, to get to know folks. And then Max, like the next day or two, did his own spatial stream, figured it all out, and off he went. And Michael and I are working on some other stuff, and finding ways also to do these shows. And again, we've done that with office hours globally for years now. But these are great ways for you to look at locally of how you get connected with other folks, both online and in person. Next question.
Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm trying to add a wow factor to an in-person fundraising auction for our foundation. Other than just a video of the items, what has moved you at live events beyond seeing the faces of the children being helped and the lives saved?
Go ahead, Jesse.
This is a cheap trick, and I apologize for it, but you time the auction to the completion of the audience's third drink, and it goes gangbusters.
Open bar. Yeah, go Jason.
Well, you could always have a live stream with a flamethrower that reacts to donations.
Yeah, I think that it is just really tying people back to the fundamentals of why they're there, and what makes a difference in that area. And finding, I don't know if the videos you have to be very good at. They have to be very short and they have to be very impactful. It's really, I find I've streamed a lot of fundraisers, and I think the fundamental problem is editing. Not editing out 80% or 90% of the content that you had to make it really tight and make it visceral. I think that's usually what happens is that you're a fundraiser, and then you go out and you ask a bunch of people for content so that you can put it together, and some testimonials and everything else, and then you feel bad because these people are partners of yours of cutting any of their testimonials out, and then you end up with way too much content. So that's that's the chain reaction of how I see fundraisers go sideways. Is that process? Next question.
Paul Walhoos in Austin, Texas. How was your Halloween? Did you do any kind of production work or take any videos or photos that are Halloween related?
Go ahead, Jesse.
It was fantastic. I'm in the Los Angeles area, and this is a county, especially in the Valley, that does it big. I ended up shooting a Beetlejuice-themed party, and here are some shots from that. This is somebody working the party as Lydia. We got Miss Argentina reading the Sandworm newspaper. Delia Beats, and the showstopper Beetlejuice himself.
That looks like a lot of fun. Go, Jason.
This is one of the few Halloweens that I haven't done what I love. Halloween is a giant, stage and act show. And the last Halloween that I think maybe it was 2 years ago was Above and Beyond, and being on stage and shooting a show like that was tremendously fun. So yeah, Halloween is big for acts.
Yeah, I did learn something, because a lot of times people say, well, if you push too hard, then some people don't want to play. And I realized, I was like, when did I stop really trying to do costumes? I loved Halloween, and I loved going to costume parties and stuff like that. And it was when I worked at ILM. This is 30 years ago. I stopped. That was pretty much the end of my thing, because you can't compete with people. People came, someone came as a 12-foot robot, They were inside this big,
the world experts.
Someone came to the ILM one as, at the time, it was Toy Story. No, Toy Story was still old, but it was still newish or whatever. They came as the claw. They came as the one of the little one of the little stuffed animals or whatever, aliens. They came as them hanging from the claw. The person was hanging from the claw. There was another person underneath that was pushing the whole thing around. It was like 15 feet high. And this is they start working on it like 8 months ahead of time. And so I stopped playing. Anyway, you just can't. I mean, I just go. Generally, if you ask me to show up, I'm just going to show up as a Scotsman and just wear a kilt. Like I just wear a kilt and some boots, and I've got the whole Scottish thing going on. And so I just go, well, that's my general costume. I did drop my son off at a place where they said, oh, there's a lot of people to do Halloween. I've never seen so many kids with so much sugar in their system ever. Like ever. There was at least 1,000 kids walking through this area of this. And what happens is it shows up in pockets of locations because all the houses have kind of decided that they're going to play, and there's enough of them around that the neighbors figure, well, I better do it too. And there's a lot of kids and everything else. And it was like, it's like nothing, and then 1,000 kids all stuffed into like 4 blocks. It was incredible. I drove very slowly to make sure I didn't run over any of them. I just had to drop my son off and get out of there, and then getting out of there took a while to make sure that everyone survived. Next question.
Tommy Johnson, St. Paul, Minnesota. What made folks open up their wallet for Apple days? I sprung for bare bones Mac Mini.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, for me, it's the giant redesign of the Mac Mini. I've got to test it. I've got to play with it, and I really love torture testing anytime there's a new standard out there. And yeah, Thunderbolt 5 and playing around with a bus and the new processor. Yep, I'll take my money.
I haven't bought anything yet. I for work I may need to
minutes,
buy.
Lindsay.
Yeah, I may for work I may have to buy a Mac Mini because we need a whole army of them potentially, and so I have to test some stuff. So I may buy one of those, but I've been putting it off. So I haven't bought anything yet. The problem is I really want a new Mac Mini just because my knee-jerk reaction is to the iMac doesn't mean anything to me. I have to say after this week, I might get a new laptop. I take my laptop when I leave the house, and I had this 3D render that I had done on my Mac Studio so quickly, and I got to the office with my little laptop and I tried to render it, and what was taking a couple minutes, I mentioned this yesterday, what was going to take a couple minutes was going to take over an hour on my laptop. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to upgrade. Go ahead, Alex.
I haven't bought one yet, but I would like the M4 Pro Mac Mini to be my new main editing computer. I have 2 Mac Mini M2 base models with 8 gigs of RAM. And I would like to replace my aging Mac Pros. I have 2 cheese grater Mac Pros under my desk, one with a dead video card that won't post, and the other one that's running my audio meters, which is just ridiculous to have a giant tower computer just running audio meters. So I'd slowly like to replace that because one thing I noticed is that the power consumption on these old Mac Pros is obscene. I mean, if anyone's taken one of those and plugged into a UPS and you just watch your load meters just go whoop, like that. So definitely would like to replace those.
Go, Jason.
Yeah, there's a $30 meter called a kilowatt, KILL-A-WATT. You realize you have a 1,000-watt power supply on that cheese grater that is running what an iPhone could do for you? Like, wow.
It is. I think that I am trying to just save up personally. I'm just trying to save up for next year for the Studio or the Mac Pro. I actually think I'm going to get a Mac Pro next year. I'm waiting for the next update for it because I need the I/O. I actually need the I/O. It's becoming problematic that I don't have it. So even though these new ones are great, I'm kind of like, well, I've got a bunch of. I have a small collection of Mac Minis, So I don't know if I really need one, but I do want one. Go ahead, Alex.
I think the one question that everyone wants to know: if you're going to get a Mac Pro, wheels or no wheels?
Oh, no wheels. I'm not going to wheel it around. What the hell? When they put the wheel, we have wheels. I'm like, who wheels their computer around? I mean,
what else costs $20,000 and has wheels? Oh yeah, a car.
Yeah. I'm going to just rack it up if I do something like that. Next question.
This one is from Nigel Dessau here in the panel in Austin. Variety just rated the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the #1 horror film. Now that Halloween is past, what was your first and favorite horror movie?
Nigel.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, by the way, Austin, Texas. So I was happy to have Austin in the house. My first was Poltergeist, but the one that's always creeped me out, when I think about it, I still shudder, is the 1973 version of The Wicker Man, which, if you've never seen, is particularly creepy. What to me was interesting about this top 10 is nothing's from the last 25 years. Most of it's in black and white, and it's all story-based.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I'm not a huge slasher fan. I mean, I've seen my share of those types of movies, but I want to start with something new. And it's, if you have the stomach for body horror movies, the new movie that Demi Moore is in called The Substance, I cannot stop thinking about it. I saw it a month ago. It's still in theaters. I would encourage everyone to go and see it while it's still there. It is such an incredible movie, and not only has a great story, it has something to say about our culture, about our obsession with youth and hanging on to youth, but it has a lot of fantastic practical effects, and it just keeps getting more and more bonkers as the movie goes on. So if you're into practical effects and that kind of stuff, I would highly recommend The Substance. When I was a kid, I was always deathly afraid of Freddy Krueger, but now I absolutely love that franchise. So, I've got the box set of the original, all the movies, and I enjoy all of them.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, a man changes and matures through his life. When I was 8, my mother got me a VHS copy of Night of the Living Dead. Blew my mind. A couple of years later, Fox showed Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and that one blew my mind again. As a man entering his autumn years, House, the Japanese film, is what speaks to me most for its freedom of thought.
Go ahead, Jason.
I wasn't allowed to watch horror as a kid, and my parents were pretty protective about it. And like as an adult, I've never really cared for it. Sure, I've certainly seen all of it, but my first thought of like really being scared when watching a movie was The Abyss, like the original cut of The Abyss. I thought it was, and to this day, I actually watched it last week. Incredibly intense movie, not horror, but yeah, that's where my mind went.
Go ahead, Alex.
To bring it back to technology, I'm sure everyone's noticed this, but I watch a lot of old horror movies from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and you notice how they've shot those films. Like, there's not a lot of shallow depth of field. Like, you notice a lot of things everything's all in focus. And now the new trend now with a lot of these movies is there's a lot of shallow depth of field, and also the lighting has changed quite a bit. So I think that's really interesting, is just the trends in camera lens choice, how things are framed, how things are shot, and the lighting as well. It's really interesting to see that evolve.
I think the best horror films right now are coming out from Jordan Peele. Whether it's Get Out, Nope, Us, and I will say that I've only seen the trailers because, like, I look at the trailers and like his movie, I just say nope. like I'm not gonna watch that. It's funny, and so I think that they're great. I'm not a big horror film person. I have a bad habit of dreaming about horror films, and so when I was a kid, I watched something with werewolves, and I dreamt about it for months, and so as a result, I really don't watch horror films, but I see his trailers, and I'm like, and I talk to people who watch them, and they're like, oh, that left me broken for a little while. So I think that those are the horror films that I think about. Go ahead, Jesse.
Alex, you touched on it. There was something in the Zack Snyder zombie movie. There was a shot where the zombie is hiding in the bokeh. Like, it's broad daylight, but because it's in the bokeh, nobody can see it, which a failure of film.
Next question.
Tommy Shanson, St. Paul, Minnesota. I hear about a lot of iPads used in production, but not specifically iPad minis. Where do you folks use these?
The iPads are used in a lot of places. I do see iPad minis floating around. I think a lot of times people want the real estate. They want the real estate. We see script supervisors. That's a place that we see. I haven't seen a script supervisor use paper for a long time. Like it was like paper, iPad. And there's, I think, some app that came out that a lot of them use, and so suddenly they're all on iPads. So that's where you see it. Camera reports is another place that we see it. I think Mickey said he uses an iPad mini for sound reports, and an 11-inch iPad Pro for scripts on set. And so those are. So I think that we do see iPad minis floating around. I think a lot of us I became resistant in the recent years of buying anything with a Lightning port. So the iPad Minis were, for a while not something that we picked up. Go ahead, Jason.
I've used iPad Minis pretty heavily in live work because it is the iPad that can fit, depending upon the pants you're wearing, in cargo pockets or in a back pocket. They're the only thing that you can put somewhere and not worry about dropping or destroying.
Next question.
Next question is from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. Sennheiser's Profile Wireless is a clip-on, tabletop, and handheld mic, all in one. Anyone had a hands-on with this pre-order item or opinions on the looks?
Haven't had hands-on yet. I'm really not a fan of the holding the mic, clipping the mic, connecting the mic to an end of a stick. All of those things bother me a lot. As a production person, so I just feel like, when people are like holding that thing up and talking to it, I get it kind of works, and it's some weird. It just. Sometimes I just feel like YouTubers should just a little production background. Like, it would be great. Like just a little, like, don't look like children. And so I know that I'm being old and curmudgeony, but it's such a bad look in my opinion. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I took a quick look at it. It looks like an interesting product. I'd like to test it. I'm sure, Sennheiser makes obviously great wireless products, and they have for a very long time. So technologically, I'm sure it'll be very good. But yeah, like Alex was saying, I'm not looking forward to people doing this, seeing this trend where they're just holding up the transmitter, as a handheld, which drives me crazy. I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. And more people seem to be doing it all the time. Yeah,
and I think that, to be fair, I think that it does have a mic input. You don't have to do it that way, so you can make it work there. So it can work, and I have the Rode Go's, I have DJI's, I don't have the Sennheiser one. Mickey said 2.4 gigahertz. I'll pass. I think that for less expensive, non-live stuff, I think some of these wireless mic systems work pretty well, especially. Like Deity has, I don't know if this one does it, but Deity will record in the transmitter, which I think is super valuable and something that Zaxcom started, but a lot of other people are starting to do. And so it's relatively inexpensive to get that done. So I do think when you start saying it can do all these things, well, which ones can it do really well? And I'm not sure, what it does really well, but it can do a lot of different things. And I think anyway, I just feel like audio is important, and a lot of times it gets a short shrift. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama City is asking, I'm looking for a small footprint foldable tablet holder for my rack fly kit. Any suggestions?
I have a variety of these small, like ones that will fold in half. These are 4 foot or 6 foot. So a lot of times they're plastic, which is why I don't necessarily like them. So if I can, I take a wooden 6 foot. I have some pretty nice, and they're not particularly expensive, but pretty nice wooden 6 foot foldable tables. And the reason I use wooden is because I really don't like putting monitors on my table. So when I put up a monitor, I want to clamp it. I have these all on arms, and I do the same thing when I'm on set. As I want to put the monitors on arms and then attach them via VESA mounts, and so I can float them around and keep them, and I get more desk space back. So I have a tendency to lean into that. Now, if you actually have a rack fly kit, the number one way that we did that is we make both the front and the back tables. So you can order a rack kit, it's like 55 inches or whatever, and the front and the back or one or the other can actually have folding legs, just one set of folding legs. And then they have clips on the side. They have these little things and you can set them in there. And so you can actually open them up and turn them into tables right next to the fly kit. And if you build them with a couple of those, you can have a whole set of desks and everything else, and they all roll in. And we've been pretty successful at that. Go ahead, Jason.
You covered most of it. My immediate thought was when you were talking about a tablet, just something that was separate, and like my immediate thought was this last arm that you recommended that I really like for the iPads.
No, I think he's looking for a foldable table. Oh, a foldable tablet holder. I'm sorry. I thought I saw a foldable table holder, but you are 100% correct that it's a tablet holder.
Well, this one's really great. Where did it come from, Alex? Because you suggested it.
That one, I don't remember. I don't remember where that one came from.
Let's see. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, that was And that one does work well. I think, again, do you want to fly it? Do you want to attach it to a table, or do you want it to be something that stands on those tables? The other thing that I have that I put my iPads on right now, I think the problem with the one that Jason had is I just didn't have anywhere to put it. The ones that I have kind of tucked in here are the Brocoon, Brocoon, and these are these little stands. I think I have one that's not in use at the moment.
Kuxiu is the manufacturer.
This is the little.
Does that sound right?
This is the one that I use. I have a lot of these, and these are for laptops and iPads. They fold up like a little stiff, which is good. So they fold up like this, and then I can pull them out, and I can, and Jason's got one too. I've got 5 or 6 of these, and so and what's nice about them is they're flat on the base. So I set other things on top of them. I got all kinds of things on top. So, and I have one on either side that hold iPads for me, and I have other ones that I use when Michael Krasny comes over, which he's coming over later today. And so, next question.
This one's for me. Did anyone see Cleanfeed's announcement that they worked with Apple to make their WebRTC browser-based solution compatible on iOS and USB-C interfaces? Looks like a neat service for double enders.
Yeah, can you give us more information about this, Alex?
Yeah, so it's a browser-based solution. I've only briefly messed around with it, but it's an audio-only service where basically 2 people in a browser, they connect to each other, and it's a ultra-low latency, very high quality, high bandwidth audio feed, and you can record both ends as well. I believe it even has a system where it can play back audio clips to the person on the other end. So a lot of people in radio and amateur radio and people with low budgets are using this solution now. I think it's free. There may be a paid model to it, but it seems to work really well. And man, it sounds really good. I think it may be using the Opus codec.
We'll have to do some more research on that. That looks really cool. So, yeah, stay tuned for more of that. Next question.
Håkan Fors in Stockholm, Sweden's asking, any recommendations for Bluetooth headset for Unity Intercom suitable for very noisy environments like a sports stadium?
So what I will say is that, I have used the Shocks for years, as a Bluetooth headset. It's not it's wireless. Now it is bone conduction, so it wouldn't work in a loud, noisy environment. For things that are louder, I've tended to use the Parrot. I've disagreed with Mickey, because Mickey says that we should only he says, and in fact he says it right here, I would not recommend Bluetooth for comms, and I'm going to have to agree with him because Unity in the last update does not see Bluetooth headsets. At least for me, I can't get it to see it. I have a wired, I have a wired set of headsets, and I've been using it consistently because my phone is seeing the headset. I can play music to the headset. I can do Zoom to the headset. I can do all these things to the headset, and Unity just stopped seeing it. It just doesn't. It just goes to the speaker. And it just happened over the last couple weeks, and it's the newest OS, iOS or whatever, I think. But something broke, and so now I'm getting really good at wired connections to my cell phone. Go ahead, Jason.
Is it possible that they're just tired of getting blamed for a comms dropout that's actually somebody using really bad Bluetooth?
I think that they don't update very quickly. I think that I feel like Unity has always been kind of a side job for the company. Even though it's their only product, it feels like they've got other things in life going on because nothing really updates very quickly with Unity. So go ahead, Alex.
What's really funny? There's a review on the App Store from 9 years ago from someone saying Bluetooth is very problematic.
Yeah, it's been, for me, it's been really convenient. Now, I always have wired backups that I'll immediately switch over to. It's very convenient to be able to walk around an office while I'm on comms and not be tied up with wires. And when I have to go back to a wired headset, I'm just what am I doing here? It was so funny. I thought, no, I'll never go to Bluetooth, and then I'm just using it all the time. But I always have a backup for wired that I can plug in immediately if I need to. Next question.
This one's for me. How does one apprentice to become a director of photography? What is the process, and what kind of things along the way would you pick up?
Go ahead, Jesse.
If we're talking like at the basic union level, you start as a PA, first in, last out every day, express interest in the department where you want to focus, and as long as you are kind of, cool, efficient, fun to work with, but not obnoxious kind of thing, you'll get moved up from, second AC to first AC to occasionally having to hold the camera to union status. And union status, they're not chucking around the camera between people when they're in the union, but you know what I mean, that you just kind of work your way up. You do it every day, all day for a long time, and then you're DPing bigger shows. It's really, really hard right now. There's been a squeeze on production for the last 3 years, and it's not de-squeezing. Every time we're about to de-squeeze, some other financial catastrophe strikes. Something happens that it just it is really, really hard to move in and move up through the ranks. But that's how you would do it. You just have to work and work and work.
Yeah, it is. One thing you want to do is pay attention to a lot of film, like, and pay attention to a lot of the first thing I would do is start watching a lot of the breakdowns and look for DPs talking about how they approach things. Look at the extras on your DVDs and so on and so forth for them to talk through those things. The other thing is you gotta, there's not a lot of ways to get good at DPing without doing it. So you have to shoot a lot, and preferably sometimes you want to shoot yourself so that you're able to make your own mistakes on your own, but otherwise look for other people that want to do it. And most of the people that I know volunteer on a lot of other shows. There's DPs that have some passion project, some 2-minute film they want to do, some test they want to do. Get on those. Get next to people. You want to stand next to people that know a lot more than you all the time. And see how it's not just what they can see, but also it's how they interact with the crew, how they plan, all those things you want to start to absorb, because they have a lot of their track record there. But being around them, I learned. I'm not a DP, but I learned a lot of what I know from hanging out with really good DPs and watching them and listening to them talk. And we're working on, as we go to 2025, finally giving you an opportunity to listen and talk to them while we start to shoot some stuff. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
And in those early days, when you're using YouTube to learn about the process in the industry, make sure there's a huge glut of aspirational educational content. What you want is just educational content. So make sure you're watching YouTubers who are actually teaching you things and not just trying to inspire you to believe that if you buy this camera, you can do this thing. I would recommend Luke Forsyth is really good for the philosophies, and Gerald Undone is really good for just the vocabulary of how you talk through a camera and what the lens does and what the camera does.
But I would say that you want to be out there shooting, and again, I would get I don't think these days you don't need to go crazy with the cameras, but should have a good, shooting camera and some lights. And then after that, you're really partnering with other people. But I don't think that there's any way to read your way into it. It's just a matter of being around smarter people and doing a lot of it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, what is the advantage of the Nano-texture glass for a mobile device, MacBook Pro, iPad Pro? From what I can see, it's a big disadvantage because you can't clean it with anything but Apple's cloth.
Go ahead, Jason.
Nano-texture is one of the coolest sounding ways to say matte finish or absolutely every display prior to, Apple's making everything incredibly shiny. The advantage is, and I've never actually got one for exactly the second reason that you said, is that it will diffuse. It will diffuse any sort of light that's going to hit directly and reflect.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, a lot of professionals will want it because a lot of specular highlights and reflections across it make it really hard to see a lot of things when you're working through those things. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama City. Jesse, how did you get your visuals with that dark black background? It's smooth.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind words. This is a panic build, what you're seeing. We've been run ragged in production and are rearranging the office right now. Now that we're through the productions, we have a chance to settle in and rearrange everything. And the background was bad. It was just bad, so I hung up a black cloth. Keep miles of black cloth in every studio. You'll never, ever, ever stop using it. It just fills in every gap. It's the glue that fixes every production is a bunch of black cloth where you need it.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, Alex, how would you recommend one invests in their network when you don't live near a major industry hub?
That's why we have volunteer programs inside of office hours, officehours.global/volunteer. That's how you invest. That's how you get to know people. It doesn't mean that you have to be a panelist, but being part of this means you're connecting with people all over the world. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. Adobe Firefly can use AI to extend video clips in Premiere. Would Blackmagic have to buy an AI company to achieve the same in Resolve, or could they do it in-house?
They can do it in-house. I mean, it's the AI stuff is a heavy lift, but it can definitely be done in-house by these companies. And so I think Blackmagic will do more and more in this area, but it's an expensive endeavor, and it's harder for Blackmagic in some ways because they give Resolve away. So most likely, and they don't have a subscription. Premiere is a little easier to figure out how this works because people are paying every month. When people pay only $300 once, it gets much harder to pay for the servers that would give them that capability. So I think that's one of the difficulties for the math to really work out for it, unless they're able to do it with a local model, which would be difficult to do fast. Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
My question for you, Alex, is do you think that's where Blackmagic's head is at? They seem to be really like, here's the camera. It's just the sensor plate. You use it like a cinema camera.
Not Resolve. I mean, Resolve's using lots of AI and lots of algorithms and so on and so forth to do a lot of those things. And so, I mean, I think that they're definitely thinking. I mean, everybody's got to think that direction. It's going to be hard to compete if you can't, do some of these little niceties that people would use there. But I think that they have less pressure because Resolve is so beefy, but. I think that people are going to get really addicted to be able to extend their clips. I think that's going to be hard. I have to admit that I was very close to going, I don't know if I need Photoshop anymore until generative AI came out on Photoshop. And then after that, I was like, well, until someone else can nail this, I use it every day. Like I just use generative AI on Photoshop every day to extend things, move things, remove things. It's magical, and I don't understand. I couldn't let go of the subscription now. So not until someone else did it well, and you can't do it without a subscription because it costs money every time you push the trigger. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, when trading in a Mac, can you transfer unused AppleCare from the machine you're trading in to the machine you're upgrading to?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yes, as long as you bought it. If you bought it outright at the beginning, it is transferable. If you pay monthly, then clearly it's not transferable because you haven't paid for it yet. Also check the specific device. It won't go cross borders, things like that.
Go ahead, Jason.
Now, this is one of the less elegant things that Apple does. I've spent a lot of time with this third-party office that handles AppleCare. The last time, if I remember correctly, that I did this and switched out after a year after buying two, they gave it to me back in cash. It wasn't transferable. They just said buy AppleCare again, and they divide it out by month, and you get a credit back.
Next question. Maybe not. Maybe I think somehow we cleared the questions there. So now I'm left hanging. So anyway, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there on the back end. Yeah. Sorry, I'm lost because what happens is I'm going to give you guys a little insight. Usually in this last couple minutes, I'm fine. I'm just doing a bunch of resets and move things around and everything else. So if I don't have that last question, did we really run out of questions or did we just cut some of them off? We really ran out. I just didn't see it coming. I thought, we have plenty of questions there. So anyway, I'm going to fill a little bit as I kind of go through. This is when I explain to you what's happening. This is what we call a fill, and this is when we don't have anything else to say. We just keep on talking and we put that stuff back in. But it does give me an opportunity to give you a reminder that we have shirts. We have shirts. If you want to support the shirts, you can go to officehours.global/shop. These shirts help fund Office Hours. And so, and we do need your funding. We do need your help. Now, you can go to applecareapp.global/donate. If you don't want a shirt and you just want to give us money, that's fine too. We'll take it. So definitely, if you to keep the lights on, it costs a little bit of money for us to pay for servers and all the other things that are necessary to keep this organization together. So your donations make a difference. But if you want a shirt out of the deal too, you can go to officehours.global/shirt. And a quick reminder: over the weekend, you'll see another 4K test tomorrow. We think that we solved the 4K problem. It was a 422 versus 420 problem, and I think that we've solved it, and we're going to test it tomorrow if it works. So Saturday should be kind of exciting because we're going to do 4K, and we think it'll be glitch free. And so if it works on Saturday, which is not recorded or it's not published, but if you watch it live tomorrow, you'll see if it works. If it works Saturday, we're going to try it next week, and then we'll try to roll it out after that. And of course, remember that Sunday is introspection. It's where we answer questions and we kind of mull through philosophical ideas. Welcome back to the second hour, and we're really excited to have James Hicks on today. James is the founder and CEO of Hicks New Media and a chief technologist at Nutanix. He has 25 years of background in IT and has a focus and a deep understanding of infrastructure, networking, storage, and cybersecurity. Nutanix really helps simplify cloud complexity with an open software-defined hybrid multi-cloud platform so that you can focus on your business outcomes and new innovations without trying to figure out how to get it all done. James, so good to have you here on the show.
Alex Lindsley, good to see you, sir. It's been, as we were saying behind the scenes, it's before we had the gray hair.
Right. Well, yeah.
I start that way, right? I start like that. No, yeah. Good to be here. Appreciate you for having me on the show.
We talked about it. So do we know what year we ran into each other?
It may have been at I'm going to date myself. It may have been at a screensavers session.
Oh, really? At a screensavers?
Oh, my gosh. Right. So back in the day, and
what were you doing at screensavers?
I was just heckling from the back of the room.
Oh, right.
That's just what I do. That's what I've done for over 3 decades right in this industry. So because I'm right up the road from the Bay. I'm in the Sacramento area. So that's you, great. Leo, it was Callie at the time as opposed to Loria, but Kevin, back in the day, again, dating ourselves, dating myself, and I should probably stop right now and just let you continue.
So from your perspective, what are you we talked a little bit about what you focus on, but what are you seeing as the key trends that you're paying attention to today? I mean, AI seems like an obvious one, but AI and what other things that are you looking at?
Yeah, and I almost wonder if AI just as a 35,000-foot level is being too commoditized, just in terms of the conversations, right? Because there's generative AI and then there's other conversations about LLMs and things of that nature. But my focus, what I'm really wanting organizations and individuals to talk about and understand is about the ransomware piece, data governance. Mm-hmm. Understanding that your individual, your organization could be that next company on CNBC or CNN that unfortunately is become hostage to a bad actor out there because the bad actors are out there working harder than we are.
And in some cases, AI fits right into this because, it used to be that you would get something from, a hacker from some other country, and it was very clear that they didn't know what they were talking about because none of the text made any sense. There was lots of errors, there were lots of things, and now I've already gotten some of these that I'm clear these are I'm getting speared. And it is definitely AI, that's writing these. It's much more conversational, much more much more contextual than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and training those models, right, has become much more streamlined, right? I'm not going to say the average Joe, but more and more individuals now have access to that technology. I mean, the earlier hour of office hours, you were talking about some older technology and things of that, and just how it's now become more easy to do everything from audio and video production and things of that nature. But now, again, anyone who has an account with ChatGPT or Perplexity or Voila or just Grok, whatever these tools are, we can feed in, or they can feed in that information and unfortunately do for good, do for bad. And organizations are becoming victim to that because, again, someone calls and says, Alex, I've got all of your critical data, and before you get it back, I'm going to need a deposit in XYZ account in wherever.
Well, and how, like, one of the things that and you can tell me whether this is accurate or not, like, one of the things I get prickly about is when people do a, CC all, or CC everyone, not do blind CC.
Yes.
And I try to explain to them that you're handing, like, we have, I have kids, right? So we have teachers,
Yes.
and those teachers don't think about those things, and they just copy 160 parents, about their kids. And I try to, I'm nice about it, but I do respond to them and go, hey, you've just built a contextual connection between all of these people, that someone could use to, that is, you are patient zero, like,
Yes.
in a virus of trust, and you really need to use that blind CC. And I think people don't realize how important that is that when someone can see the connection between you and somebody else, it makes it much harder for you to figure out what's true and what's not.
Interestingly enough, and you're spot on, right? Because again, even folks within my industry, within the enterprise technology world, still will do something of that nature. And I'm also that get off my lawn kind of guy telling you, don't do that. Why are you copying everyone on this distribution? It gets into the wrong hands, or even a disgruntled employee. You never want to think about that, but there could be someone who maybe getting laid off, whatever the case may be.
And the problem right now isn't that they're even doing something, but it's that if someone gets their email hacked, and then now with AI, if I have 60,000 emails, if AI jumped into my email and hacked it and just went through that, it could build a web of understanding of what I'm doing, talking to, contextually having conversations with me that would be almost impossible for me to understand what is true and what isn't.
And you wouldn't even realize that was happening because it could look like you coming from you to the recipients. So again, you're completely blindsided by those actions. So that's reality. That's where we are today. And again, it's just being vigilant. Again, I say the word data governance, being really.
And how do you
conscious.
protect against that? Like, how do you protect against those kinds of attacks?
It's continual evolution of training and information, right? Giving people this type of a conversation about these are the ramifications of what it is that you do. Having processes and tools in place on the back end as well to protect the innocent from doing things that would probably get them in trouble. So having tools in place that would probably flag emails as they go out, or actually monitoring systems as well. A lot of times folks may not want Big Brother to be watching them from an organizational perspective, but again, we've got to protect ourselves from ourselves a lot of times. So,
well, I mean, when someone got hacked in LastPass at home, this it's your only job. Like it's your only job. You
had one job to do.
Like, you work in security for a security company. Well, but it's hard though. Like I know that I worked on some highly secure projects, and in those cases, we are being tested all the time. We're getting sent emails. So part of it is that we're constantly getting sent emails that if you hit the wrong button, it goes, hey, you could have just taken everything down. How often is that part of the training?
That's part of the training, and again, it's change management, change processes in place. I was just getting ready to say, so I was recently at the CrowdStrike conference, FallCon, and a lot of folks within technology realize and know and remember what happened at CrowdStrike. They took half the internet down right over the summertime,
right? And
I really wanted to be a kid in the candy store at the keynote and just to hear and see if they fell on the sword. And to their credit, they did. Right. Again, doing a system change, a global change that caused the havoc that it did across the internet. But again, updating processes, not being content with the way we've done things for a long period of time, but actually evolving and iterating as things change, as new systems get put into place, new infrastructure gets put into place. So it's really having that, maybe a governing body, having individuals in place and also automated algorithms in place that manage to make sure that as we evolve as an organization, that we have these checks and balances in place. So it's a never-ending cycle. Folks, keep up on, like I heard you talking about even before the last hour, keep up on your LinkedIn, keep up on your training, keep up on your certification, because this is continuing to evolve in terms of how we need to be monitoring and taking advantage of situations that come up into play. Right, you really have to be aware of what's going on and be two steps in front of the bad actors.
Now, a lot of people talk about what platforms are more secure than others. Is there really any difference between them?
Back in the day, we would say that, of course, the Mac OS was hacker-free, but the bad guys have gotten around that. I am still a member of the cult of Mac. I gave Steve 10 good years. Behind me, you probably see I've got his Crazy One speech, trying to make it put a dent in the universe.
You worked at Dell for a long time, didn't you?
All right, now you're going to make me date myself. Again, I shaved today, so I took all of my Movember beard off. But okay, so I gave HP 20.
Right.
Back in the day when I used to hang out with Lou Platt back in the, so 20 years at HP, I gave Michael Dell at Dell, I gave him 10.
Right.
And I'm a member of the Cult of Mac. I gave Steve 10 years as well.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm just dating we're starting off this. This is supposed to be a good show. This is supposed to be an uplifting. Now you've got me.
But so you've seen a lot of all of these things, and now I think that it does feel though that Apple probably does a little bit more because of the way that they manage it, they're slowly tightening these security nooses.
Yes.
They're not turning all the dials all the way up to but every year it feels like it's a little bit more closed than it was the year before.
Yeah, and Apple, it's very a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? Apple. Consumer first, obviously, but every experience from any Apple device has to be the exact same. And that does take a closed, controlled ecosystem to maintain. That's a very hard thing to do, what Apple does versus Android or versus, and again, I don't want to get into the war or the conversation about that, but by making that integration of AirPlay and handoff and all of those things, those tools talking seamlessly together and processing on device as opposed to in the cloud and things of that, and making it seamless to the end consumer.
And how important is related to that? I mean, one of the things that we start to see more and more of is biometrics, right? And so,
yes.
So the biometrics is, like it used to be, the only time you saw biometrics is if you had $10 million in the bank. I've never had $10 million in the bank, but I have friends.
Listen to Alex. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he's over there talking about his accounts there. Okay,
I don't have $10 million, but I have people that I know that they go, oh yeah, they send you this little eye scanner. So that every time you want to deal with your account, you have to look into the thing before you can open the account. And so that biometrics, what was something that was really only for high, value or high, rich people, that now it's like, it's everything, like it's face scan. It's, you can use your, all those things, are coming together. And, in many ways, doesn't that make things in many ways more secure, because it's saying, hey, I need to validate that you are there and you are a person before I do something.
Yeah, the face scanning is much more secure than even something like a fingerprint, things of that. Because I used to work in the data center world as well. So I was part of the first data center in Northern California that installed a production instance of Twitter. And I'll always call it Twitter. I'll never call it X. So again, you can put me on about that. So again, getting into the environment was all facial recognition, and with Face ID, again, just having that proof of identity, that proof of you, because fingerprints can be spoofed, but no one else looks like Alex. No one else looks like James. My kids can't even get into my phone anymore. When they were kids, when they were much younger, they could, but no longer at this point. But that again is that additional layer of security, especially when we're doing financial transactions on these mobile devices. We live on these mobile devices now, so we've got all of the contact information. We've got all of the financial information. Unfortunately, folks may have passwords and social security numbers and things of that nature on these mobile devices. So
isn't a lot of these making it easier to have better, like, for instance, I remember when I used to have like 3 passwords. Like I just used 3 passwords for everything, a long time ago. And then about 15 years ago, I got LastPass, and now you have a hash, and whether it's LastPass or 1Password or Apple's new passwords or Google or whatever it is, everything has a hash. It's a random hash. And if people aren't doing that, you're crazy, by the way. Like you're not, everybody needs to have, every news site has a new hash, in there. And then you can tell me whether my approach is strong. I don't try to keep track of for a handful of the things that I need to do to get into it. I have a phrase from my childhood that nobody would know. That's very long. That that is usually on a weird amalgamation of something, not something from a movie, not something from something else, and I type that phrase in, and I've never spoken that phrase out loud, and I won't, and I think that, but that's how I get into things, and a couple different phrases. It's not one, but the thing is, it's much easier to remember, and you can make it really long, which makes it much harder. Is that a good approach to that?
No, I mean, what's interesting is I do very similar, and again, I won't tell my phrase because two people on this planet know what my phrase is, but also having multiple. Because there has to be a contingency as well to security. It's just like backups and recovery and data recovery and things of that nature. I maintain copies of photos and music and stuff in multiple clouds. So taking it from a consumer perspective, there obviously there's the iCloud, there's the Google Cloud, but I maintain a local copy plus redundancy. But that's just me being in this industry. But that's a conscious activity and conscious effort that yourself, myself, and a lot of other folks are doing that really is no longer a want, it's now a need. Because again, there are so many opportunities to get into information. There are so many phishing instances. There are so many times where we're getting that call where someone is saying that they're your lost grandmother or they're your lost family member and they need some money, right? So, and they're getting very systematic about pulling at the emotional strings and causing folks to react. And once you get one reaction into an environment, then you can subvert other security measures. So having multiple security and hash codes and things of that nature, having multiple locations where you store your critical information, that's again, it's no longer a want, it's now a need.
And do you
not trying to scare anybody, but just be vigilant and be conscious of how we maintain our data, because data is the most important.
And to realize it's always going to be human. I have some folks that I know that are red team, and I asked them, I said, who stopped you? Like, because they get hired to do red team on different companies and everything else, and they said, oh, I never get stopped. Like, it takes sometimes it takes hard, takes a little longer, or it takes a little bit more work. But he goes, never been stopped ever. And I said, well, what's the, how do you get through? Is it, I was asking for is it algorithms? And he goes, no, it's always somebody. Somebody always makes a mistake. Somebody, and he said, somebody is always trying to be nice. Like, that's where he said, it's not that they're stupid. It's not that they're, not like, but he goes, he said, someone's always trying to just be nice. They don't want to have a conflict. They're going to let you, they said they'll let you glide in, past, when they open the door. They are going to, I'll just give you this password, or I'll just give you this
that's it, right? It's the tailgater, right? Yeah.
The tailgating he said tailgating is like the number one way that they get in is tailgating, and just going, I forgot I just didn't have the thing, and they're like, I got you, and everything else, and it's that, and in a lot of big companies, you'll see the funny thing he says there's a sign on the door that says no tailgating. Like literally, there's a big thing that says don't let anyone tailgate. And he goes, and I can still talk my way in.
Like, you, right? Oh, yeah.
And it just, so I think that always becomes, it's always a human error. Do you think that we're going to get to a point where you have to validate everything you send someone? Like, if you can turn it on and say, like, I'm me when I sent you that text, or I'm me when I send you that email, and it's using biometrics, and so that someone can say, I don't know if that was really Alex. Is it validated? And asking for that, like in that communication.
Yeah, that's probably a 3-factor authentication, right? Because we've got 2. But again, that's going to be that tertiary or a deeper level of requirement of validation and verification of identity. Yeah. Do I think we'll get there within the next short, mid, and long term? And again, in technology terms, that could be 6 months, 8 months, a year, 3 years, whatever the case may be. I see that more as a midterm deployment.
Right.
Because then you start getting into privacy conversations, deeper into privacy conversations and consideration and things like that. And again, from an oversight side.
The hard part is that you have people who don't want to be caught doing, not caught, but just don't want to be connected to absolutely everything they're doing. But at the same time, if you don't do that, then you don't know.
You're left out.
Like that's the, you don't know if it's going to work or not, or you're at risk, so it becomes a really complicated problem.
And I hate to interrupt you, but again, if you want to be a contributing member of society, as we are today and tomorrow, you're going to have to be able to bend and flex and be a part of these systems and these ecosystems and these changes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Again, if you're going to want to do mobile transactions, especially financial transactions, if I'm going to want to communicate with someone using iMessage, WhatsApp, whatever these tools are that are encrypted and things of that, I'm going to need to validate that James is sending a message to Alex. I'm going to have to validate that I want to send you something via Venmo, or what are the kids using nowadays? What's the other? If I want to send cash and things of that across the internet, there's going to have to be additional layers of validation and verification. Two-factor is nice.
Right.
It's gotten us to this point, but the bad actors are starting to understand how to circumvent those systems as well. So something's going to have to come into play within the next midterm, I would say.
Well, and I think that while we, people get very concerned about, government, security and so on and so forth of what is our government watching. But as someone who's worked all over the world, I know that the reason that I don't have walls around my house is because of NSA. like the NSA, like the NSA is why we don't have.
Alex knows too much.
We can talk about it, but it's metadata is a huge piece of that puzzle. Not even looking at what we're saying, but metadata is a massive part of what keeps us safe, in a lot of those areas. So I think that we have to always take into account that some of that security is necessary. I still am careful about what I say,
Yes.
online. Yes. But I sometimes, but I think that after doing some work that I did, I realized just don't be interesting. Like,
just be very monotone.
Just be boring.
My problem
just live
is
a boring life because it's so hard. Like I definitely was in this whole when Colorado put out they had a new rule to get your driver's license. You had to give them their thumbprint, and I literally melted my thumbprints on a pan so that I wouldn't have to give them to them. This is 30 years ago, and then 2 years later did some work that I realized, never mind. like it's not worth it. Like you can't. Resistance is futile.
That's it.
Stop worrying
right.
about it. But the and how much of a danger do you think that is, as far as not just people spoofing you, but people, tracking everything that you're doing?
It's a danger, again, to be cognizant and be aware. And I'm not here to come with doom and gloom conversations, but just really come with a conversation of being, again, conscious of our actions and our activities, just to be more focused on what we share and what we don't share. Just as you said, you don't have to be monotone, you don't have to be non-interesting, but again, just be aware that those types of things are being analyzed and scoped by people out there who may have ill intentions amongst them. So you
just don't want to provide points of leverage.
You don't, right? You don't want to be you want to be friendly, you want to be nice, you want to be a good person, but again, let's not open the kimono too much. Yeah. Let's keep some, the friends and the families and the acquaintances. Let's have kind of some degrees of separation amongst ourselves.
In some ways, we're almost trying to get back to. There's some place where we're trying to get back to. In a community, it took a long time to be known. It took a long time for you to, and oftentimes you would move to where I grew up. Someone would move in and they were still new for 20 years. Like they were still like, oh, they just got here, because the family had been there for 3 generations or 4 generations, and you knew their family and their family and their family, and there was a certain level of trust. And I think that in some ways, a lot of these biometrics and some of the other things that we're doing in our, networks, comes, to a that we need to somehow get back to something like we don't trust someone the first time we see them, and in the same way we don't see them online. We've got a couple questions rolling in. Let's go to those and we'll come back to this conversation. Let's go to the first question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. With Broadcom significantly increasing VMware license costs, have you seen increased interest from customers in migrating to Nutanix or Proxmox?
I did not set this question up, but it's a great question because in the day job while working at Nutanix, of course, we are seeing incredible growth, incredible interest, right? And just having the conversation. And I want to change the dialogue. It's not VMware. VMware, a fantastic company, fantastic organization, fantastic people. It really is a Broadcom tax. Broadcom coming from a financial perspective, just charging out the roof for functionality and services. So it's a Broadcom concern and not a VMware, but Nutanix is seeing a lot of interest because Nutanix has a hypervisor alternative that a lot of organizations are looking to.
What a hypervisor is.
Yeah, so from a virtualization perspective, again, so going from physical nodes, physical boxes, physical infrastructure within a data center, being able to actually segment and segregate physical infrastructure and have virtual systems, virtual machines, virtual instances running on a single piece of hardware. So I can have multiple workloads that are using a finite set of resources on the same box that do multiple activities, multiple jobs. So not just one computer in the data center doing one thing, but one computer in the data center doing multiple activities and serving multiple functions, and being able to divide those resources, the RAM, the storage, the networking components, and things of that.
Right, and because a lot of times people aren't fully utilizing the hardware that they have at any given time, so it's just a matter of becoming more efficient with that. Craig, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is part of what I do day in, day out, and the chaos that Broadcom introduced to this whole market. You got to understand, they've got like a 60 or 70% market share of this environment, and for Broadcom to just blunder and give everyone signals that their price is going to double. There's going to be a lot of case studies out of this.
Well, this is why everyone pushes against monopolies, right? Is because they get to a certain level and then they just start jacking up prices very quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, as James said, VMware is an amazing company, great products. In fact, the biggest issue right now is VMware's got 50, 60 different products. There isn't one place that everybody can say, oh, I don't want to deal with Broadcom's pricing, so I'm going to switch over to company X, Nutanix or wherever. Nobody covers all of those 50 or 60 products. Right. So depending on what they use, they might easily switch some of them, but they're going to have to piecemeal it.
And that's the challenge, right? I mean, it's the unfortunate challenge, unfortunate opportunity that a lot of these organizations are being put in the lurch on this. Because again, they're getting that bill from Broadcom that's 3, 4, 5, 10 times higher from a licensing perspective than they were paying before. And
it's crazy.
It
seems crazy.
It hurts, right? Again, you empathize for these organizations, but there are a few answers out there. There are a few alternatives.
Yeah. Next question.
This one's for me. Is anything happening in the automated testing sector with respect to AI, machine learning at all to help improve the quality of tests to uncover problems, thinking back to the disastrous CrowdStrike issue?
More vigilance in terms of the organizations themselves. Again, like I was saying, I was at Falcon, and the CEO and founder for CrowdStrike, they fell on the sword, and they admitted that we had some issues. And kind of like I was saying earlier with Alex, that just being more cognizant, conscious, and more vigilant in terms of before pushing that enter button or before submitting that change, that our processes, our change management are in place. Now, do we even really? I'll ask the question back to the person. Do we want all of this to be automated, or do we still, again, like the conversation Alice and I were having, do we still want to have that human intervention? Do I still want Craig's eyes looking at this document before we actually submit it, before the algorithm initiates the change? So it's a conversation, again, about oversight, about governing boards, about regulation. I mean, it starts blossoming out into that kind of conversation as well. Do we want the robots to take over completely?
Well, and again, one of the things we found with a lot of the automation that we've done in the past is that where we see it work best is when the computer is simplifying the data coming to the human, and the human's making the final decision.
Yeah.
And so the computer can give you a lot more. The AI or algorithm or whatever is going on there can hand you a lot of data that makes it easier for you. Now, you still could make the wrong decisions, but again, and this gets back into someone skilled at what they do can sometimes see what those things are, and that's the hard part with data is that. You get the wrong data, you make the wrong decisions as well. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'm not proposing that we just let computers make the final call, because I do think you need a human being to verify. But I'm more interested in the technology available right now, and could this type of newer technology help with automation? Because we have automated tests now, people can script stuff, but with more of the advanced stuff with machine learning, because AI is good at determining and figuring out patterns. Could that be helpful at uncovering problems so a human being, being the last person in the chain, could go, oh, I didn't actually anticipate that.
Yeah, no, I concur with that 100%. Right. Again, help me to do what I need to do better and more efficiently and more effectively. Right. Give me the pretty chart that actually says these are the pros, these are the cons, these are the consequences, these are all the ramifications of making this particular change, and then allow me or allow Alex to make that decision in terms of do we implement this into the environment. So I agree. Helping us to be more efficient in our daily task, helping us to be more the speed to market as well is where a lot of these algorithms and where these tools, that's really what all this is about anyway. This generative AI, artificial intelligence, these tools are really to help us do our thing, whatever that thing is, more efficiently, more effectively, and less error prone as well. So I agree with you on that.
And even just thinking about things, like one of the things that I've really gotten into Notebook LM, with Google, and the ability to throw a bunch of documents in there, and I'll throw a pile of documents in there, and then I just start I don't care. The podcast thing was what everyone talked about, which is pretty good. It's a little over the top, but generally, I gave it a book that's probably 400 pages long. And it did a 15-minute, and it was the best description of that book I've ever heard. It definitely did. It was a little superlative. Like there was a lot of they're talking about some really wild stuff.
Some big words in that one, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's just like this was really important, and this is really exciting, and about something really boring. And so I think that it has a power, but what the real power is I throw manuals into it. So I've gotten into this habit with Notebook LM. Is I throw a manual into Notebook LM, let it process it, and then I just interrogate it in real time. How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And it just comes up with the answer. And it's not it's not hallucinating. Because it tells me where it found it. But I don't have to figure out my search terms. I don't have to, and it oftentimes responds in plain English. Just go to here, click this, go to the menu, go down, go over, and it figures that out for me. And I think that those are. I think that one of the things that's really important is that I don't think that we understand how close all of this is from ending. And I think that that's the everyone here knows that I have a slight obsession with coronal mass ejections, and it's because I find it fascinating that no one thinks about them at all. And there's a 12% chance that a coronal mass every decade. There's a 12% chance that a coronal mass ejection will kill half the Earth, kill half the people on Earth. And you're just kind of 12% is a really high number. And you see it that's not a rumor, that comes from NASA. And so you're just wow, we're not paying attention to something. The way I think about that is the biggest fear I have is not that AI is going to take over. It's that we're all going to not be able to do anything anymore. It's going to do all the things for us, and then we're going to be kind of in WALL-E, on our little scooters, unable to actually execute anything.
I mean, to raise the energy up in this conversation a little more.
No, but I think
Alex is destroying. It's like Whopper, right? What was the movie?
Exactly. I think that the opportunity there is that the is how important it is as we get all these tools to still, what I use them for right now is to learn. It's learning and getting better at what I do is what I'm using those for, less than doing it for me. Right. And I think that's where the real power is, because I've never learned as fast as I am now. The ability to absorb information now is at a level that it's really hard to describe if you're using them well. Yeah.
That's a real, again, conscious mentality that you have there as well, by leveraging the technology, but not necessarily relying on it to be the end all to be all.
Right.
And the fact that we've gotten so far in such a short period of time, I'm looking at the folks here on the panel as well. You probably could remember back when we had the static Encyclopedia Britannicas in the living room, right? And that was the source of reference. But again, it was static.
Right.
But now we can put that prompt into these models and generate real-time information with those references back to resources and things of that. And it's continuing to evolve. It's continuing to get better. It's an exciting time in such a short period of time that we've gotten to where we are today. And it's going to continue from a hockey stick perspective just to grow and get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
I keep dating myself. It's bad.
Craig McFarland in Boston, Massachusetts. How has it been working at Nutanix with this year's Chaos created by Broadcom?
Go ahead, Craig. Do you want to add to that before? We kind of talked to it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pile on. I guess it's more the question of whenever you get a company, and I'm partial to startups, but whenever you get somebody in a market that's dynamic and changing culturally within the company, it's this huge opportunity, and it's really, I find it a lot of fun to see and for people to jump on. And knowing that Nutanix has this huge opportunity, how is it like working with the team, looking at all of those new opportunities?
I like that there's not too many layers. I like the fact that, again, I get to sit in various conversations that really drive strategy, especially around various pieces of the platform. Right, the platform has many pieces, from a storage side, from a network side, from a database side, from a containers and Kubernetes side. But the fact that I get to sit in various conversations with various directors, various VPs, various senior VPs, from both the technical side and from the sales side, again, drive strategy, drive messaging, really is refreshing. I love my past history, again, at the Apples and the Dells and the HPs, but getting on the Amtrak and going down to San Jose once in a while, sitting with my senior vice president from the technical side and talking about what's the next iteration, evolution of something like Data Lens, which is, data governance and data blindness awareness for resources within an environment. That's
Explain that a little more. What's that mean by a Data Lens?
So Data Lens is actually a premium product that is offered from Nutanix that allows you to eliminate what we call data blindness. If I ask a system administrator, a system operator within the environment, how many files do you have within your environment? What's the total capacity that's utilized? How much before you need to start moving data from on-prem to off-prem to a cloud provider or something of that nature? And a lot of times you don't have those answers directly in front of you. They're on an Excel spreadsheet or they're in somebody's file cabinet. It's a water cooler conversation. Data Lens allows you to see into that information real time and analyze, is Alex logging into the environment at 2:30 in the middle of the night to some particular files and folders and infrastructure pieces that he doesn't have access to? Are there permission issues that we need to look at? Is something open too wide? Is there like a 777? Is access too wide for a particular environment? Do I have those ransomware issues happening? Do I have someone trying to get into my environment? So it monitors that. Data Lens really is, again, that premium platform or premium tool that monitors all of the storage infrastructure within the environment and gives you those analytical insights to the data. How much capacity do I have? How much files do I have? Who's accessing the environment? Are there any anomalies for security concerns and things of that?
How do you deal with, there's this balance between what I call a data hole. So anything that's not in electronic form to me is a data hole. like I don't write notes on paper ever, because I'm like, when am I going to find that again? And so I need, so I don't write on it. But at the same time, if I lost everything, it would be in electronic world, it could all go away pretty quickly. How do you balance the need for things to be in a physical space, but also live in a digital world?
That's a great question. That's a great question, which I may not have a full answer for, because I also walk around with this Apple Pencil 100% of the time, and that's just where I keep all of them. Because again, I maintain multiple copies of that data, so I'm not only relying on one particular location. Should something go down, should AWS go down for 8 hours, like it typically does, right? And I lose access to bits of information, I have redundant copies of data that I'm working on. So I understand the nostalgia. I understand, again, the draw of actually having physical copies of assets. But then again, I'm a contingency-minded, contingency thinking person in insurance. Should the house catch fire? Should something happen, and again, I lose those assets, or should I forget to lock the safe and something gets missing and things of that nature? So I've gone 100% digital. I've gone 100% digital. I've gone 100% EV as well. So I'm just listen. I'm just bucking the trend all the way, buddy.
That's great.
Right. I will never buy another gas car for me. So again, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, that's where I am. I'm digital just like you, Alex.
Yeah, 100%. Next question.
This one's from Jason Beish in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Funny you should mention messaging security. Apple rolled out contact key verification intended to do precisely that. Do you think adoption of that sort of technology will just be rolled into future logins?
Yes. Yes, it's
good answer.
And here's okay, and let me expand on it a little bit. I believe it to be when Steve took the headphone jack out of the iPhone. We didn't know we wanted it. We didn't know we needed it. We were all up in arms when it happened. But as you guys were saying about an hour ago on an earlier segment, very rarely do we use wired. We're all wireless now. And we begrudgingly moved over to Bluetooth. We begrudgingly moved over to this wireless technology. So again, it's more of a seamless integration and utilization of technology, especially when you need to be secure. And we're talking specifically about Apple at this particular time because they are looking to lead the mainstream and lead the conversation around that side. So that's just another aspect of being secure in your own right.
And in some ways, as that continue to build an Apple moat, like this gets into the blue bubbles versus the green bubbles of, contact key could get to a point where, well, I know that you are you because you're on a
yes.
On an iOS or a Mac OS, and I don't know that you are you if you. And I think that's when people say, why are they? If we're going to RCS, why are we still using green bubbles? But it's because Apple is only getting started. As far
only
as
getting started, getting started.
And the hard part is that it's very hard to do that in a federated environment, right? Like it's very hard to create trust when you're going across a heterogeneous connection system.
I mean, think about that, right? Again, just we're talking about that because we're behind the scenes, we're from the administrative side, and we're from the design side as well. But having that conversation for the consumer, again, from a usability perspective, picking up these devices and being able to access information and know, again, that I'm talking to who I'm talking to on the other end, or I'm sending my $50 to my kid and I know it's getting to them. That behind the scenes communication, connection, handoff, handshake is very, very complex to do, and to make it seamlessly to the end consumer. There are pros and cons to it, but again, there are consumers need to understand that, again, that is where we are, where we're going, and we have to have some of these frameworks and some of these boundaries in place to get to that point.
Next question.
This one's from Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts. What big company technology and approaches do you see becoming usable for smaller businesses?
What approaches?
Large companies have a lot of, heavy duty IT and security and so on and so forth. And a lot of times small businesses are still trying to figure it out. But it does feel like a lot of these things are becoming more available to, SMBs.
Well, yeah, you think about specializations actually becoming less and less important, right? Again, there are very few or fewer dedicated storage admins. No one's talking RAID levels anymore. No one's talking no one's talking some of the older legacy technology types of perspective. There are still DBAs. There are still folks that do those kinds of activities. But again, from a infrastructure and a technology perspective, we are all becoming generalists and knowing enough to be dangerous. But again, having that insight and using the tools, using AI, using algorithms, using whatever is out there from a process and planning perspective to know enough about the storage, and know enough about the network, know enough about the compute to get the job done and be efficient. So leveraging some of what was only available to the big guys, the big boys out there, and having those tools readily available, and actually more cost effective nowadays as well, right? As opposed to what it was to be an entrant back in the day to get into some of these tools and some of these capabilities. It's actually come down in terms of what that price versus what that cost is. So we're starting to see more folks, hopefully as well, level up their own training, level up their own expertise in their particular industry, and be less specialized and be more generalized, so they know a bit more of the overall organization. So like a business major is actually a strategic business management major, as opposed to just a micro or macroeconomics major. If you're doing marketing or economics still stay in classes there. But again, understand how the overall business operates. Understand the operational piece. Understand the management pieces. Understand fulfillment. Understand finance, things of that. So again, being more generalist and knowing multiple pieces of an organization, I think that's starting to filter down more into the SMB marketplace as opposed to just being in the large-scale organizations.
Man, look at how easy some of this stuff has become. When I started doing e-commerce, this would have been 2001, when I started selling things online. And, we wrote our own, or we hired somebody to write our own e-commerce system because, using the going rate was 25 to 28%. To not do what Apple's doing. Apple does a lot of things, like a 30% or 15% or whatever. I'm talking about like to charge the credit card, send us an order that it happened, which we're still fulfilling physically, was 22 to 26%, and we got it down to 12%. And nowadays, you open up Squarespace, and then you open up a Stripe account, and later that afternoon, you're doing it for 2.5% or 3% or whatever, you just flip it on. So I think that, to your point, I think a lot of those things have gone from being really complicated and hard to something that you can just kind of, turn on, to make that.
Yeah. The barriers of entry have definitely come down, and it's almost, it's a good thing because there's less of an excuse now for folks who do want to be more entrepreneurial, who do want to fire up their own digital presence online or something of that nature. Those barriers of entry are no longer there. Heck, we no longer have to know how to write HTML to make a website, as you just said.
I opened up as a thought experiment. I opened up ChatGPT. I've mentioned this on the show before, but I opened up ChatGPT and said, write me a full description of the game Tetris. And it wrote the full description. I said, now write me Tetris in HTML. And it just said, here it is. Download this and put this in. I opened it up and started playing. It was literally
my goodness.
Yeah, it was just and it in 10 minutes I had to find and build a Tetris game. It wasn't a great one. I don't think I would sell it, but as far as but as you look through the code, it had figured out all the interface was bad, but all of the logic was there, and you could see how it figured that out.
I'm gonna try that with Doom. Remember Doom?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. See again, dating myself.
See what happens there. Yeah, that'd be fun. Doom. Anyway, we sat down and we played that. I played all of Doom in one day with 5 guys. We went and did when it came out, we were all excited. I worked at a game company. We literally sat down, did not stand up for 12 hours. Did not eat, did not do anything. We just played for 5 hours straight.
Good times. Good times.
For 12 hours straight and got to the end. The next question.
Jason Baisha in Albuquerque, New Mexico is asking, might blockchains be a public, disintermediated way to let users finally set privacy preferences and know they'll be enforced everywhere? It's an idea I've been playing around with for the past year.
Where are we in the era of blockchains? Blockchains were nothing, and then they were everything, and now they're kind of in between. You can't just say, it used to be that you could say, we're going to put it on the blockchain and raise $2 million. There was kind of that, and I think that the shine has worn off a little bit in that process.
And it's unfortunate because there's been a handful of very public instances where the blockchain has not failed, but just become under scrutiny.
Right.
And I wonder. I appreciate the question from Jason. It's a great question. I appreciate it, but I just wonder the adoption, right? Just again from a full-on majority perspective. Just because again, there's been so many public issues with access to data, losing the keys, whatever the case may be. There's been more. The positives and pros and the cons and the negatives and the pluses have just been kind of right in alignment with each other. I would love to see more wins. And again, the challenge with the blockchain, the challenge with that becoming more mainstream is, again, there's going to have to be maybe that oversight. And the blockchain environment, crypto environment, just those folks that are within that world are really trying to separate from a lot of that oversight, a lot of that regulation, right? Again, my data, my information, my money, my finance, let me do these transactions. I control that myself. I don't need X, Y, and Z overlooking what I'm doing. So again, I think there's going to have to be some kind of consensus or some time where they come to the bargaining table and figure that out. But I personally also would love to see more full on adoption of blockchain methodology and mentality. So
good, Jason. You want to add anything?
No, I mean, you basically got right to it. I know this is a far-flung and weird thing, but my immediate thought was like, now that blockchain is no longer put into everything, now that's AI. What can it actually be? What can it actually do that is truly useful other than raise Bitcoin another $20,000?
See, I didn't want to say that part right there, but I'm glad you said it. But again, that's the interesting use case. That's the conversation I think that needs to happen, and it's not going to go away. It's just, again, where is it going to continue to evolve, and are we going to see more wins? Are we going to see more pros and more positives as opposed to instances where the infrastructure, the environment has actually, I don't want to say collapsed, but I will say fell on 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of thing. So it's an interesting conversation. I don't know if it's as front of mind as it was within the last 5 years or so, to be honest with you, because again, AI is now taking over the conversation, and that is actually now where the majority of mindsets are. But
we just have to have AI generating blockchain.
Is that what we need to do?
AI generating blockchain or blockchain validating AI, and then we're pulling it all together here. We add a little fusion power to it, and we're set. We're set.
We'll get on that. We'll get on that. We'll get that Mac Pro that you're going to get next year. We'll get that to run that.
Yeah, exactly. The good news is that, the blockchain takes finding money in the closet to a whole nother level. I had a friend who found his computer from 2012, and it turned out he had 19 Bitcoins that he had mined in 2012. Bought a house.
That is good stuff.
Generative AI. Where do you see that going?
Oh man, that's the next rocket. That is the rocket ship, right? And put your seatbelt on, because it started with creating images. Now we're creating video. Now we're using it to chop long form content and short form content for creators. I know you had Opus clip on last week. Now we're creating music as well. For one of the shows that I do on my channel, I've used Suno to I put in the prompt and told it what the description was. It spit out a music, could be a hit song. Right. So generative AI has gone from just playing and making cartoons and animations and things of that nature to where now we're actually using it for business-minded folks. Folks are using it as a replacement for maybe that graphic designer, using it maybe as opposed to that copy editor, creating conversation pieces, creating transcripts, it's nothing's endless, but the possibilities are boundless in terms of where we're going to go. We haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I use Midjourney and Runway and a bunch of other ones pretty often. And
yes,
what I notice is so for instance, it's revolutionized my PowerPoint or my keynote presentations because there was all these things when we do a show, a lot of times I have to show you, hey, there'll be 3 people talking, and then there'll be 2 people talking, and then this will be 1 person talking, and this is what it looks like when the questions pop up. And this is how, and it's all talking heads. It's all like what we see here.
Right.
And how do I customize the people that I put in the windows? I used to go to iStock Photo and I would spend $20 an image to grab images of people. And, this one is for this group. So I need people to look that way. And I need people to look this way. And I need diversity. And I need, of backgrounds and locations and people and everything else. How do I do that? So I sat down on a Saturday afternoon and made 2,000 headshots. And all their eyes are exactly at the same height. And they're all different backgrounds, but they're all different, with a handful of prompts. And I don't write good prompts. I evolve images. So what I do is I give it a simple prompt, and then I just tell it what I like, and I use evolution, So, and I evolve what I want it to look like. And as a result, I think that I got thousands of images. I condensed it down to 200 or 300, but now I have this template that I can just open up this Keynote document, and I've got hundreds of people, and I'll go grab this one, and this one, and this one.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That would have cost me thousands of dollars, you know. And anytime I want to do an example, I'm like I had one where I was talking about the evolution of communication, from hieroglyphics to paper to radio and TV and everything else. And I had funny little images that I made for all of those. And it's so much more interesting than whatever I was doing before. And I think that that's, my favorite part of a prompt is over a plain white background with 20% buffer, or 20 pixel buffer, and so I get these little examples and I cut them out and I put them, I have this little library. But I think that is the, those kinds of things. I think people think that it's going to take over entertainment, but it's that glue, I think. Right. Yeah. That is what's really useful right now.
Yeah. And you just gave a cheat code, right? So prompt engineering is really going to continue to evolve. And again, that's something I don't think we've really scratched the surface because no one really understands. No one knows how far we can take it. And again, each language, each model, the Groks, the Perplexities, the ChatGPTs, the Voilas, whatever, the Claudes, all of those, who knows what we can put in there and then what the result is going to be. And each time you put something in and make a tweak to it or make a change to that prompt that you engineer, it's going to come out different. So that's an exciting time. Again, that's how, again, leveraging technology and not being afraid of it, but actually taking advantage of it and seeing where it's going is really going to be an exciting time for us in the short and midterm.
Yeah, I mean, I try almost every day to leave a little bit of time. I don't schedule, I don't call it this, but I schedule into my time of creating a little wonder every day, and which means that I wonder what this would what this would look like, or I wonder how this would work, or whatever. And it's usually about an hour a day that I spend on just fiddling. I'm just gonna, and sometimes it's often even before the show that it happens. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and I'm fiddling around with something. But it's jumping into a new AI tool, or it's grabbing some hardware, or doing something else. But I don't have a reason for it. Like I don't have a deadline. I just want to play with the idea. Like, I'm going to grab a book, and like when Notebook LM came out, I'm going to throw a book into Notebook LM and see what it does. Like, what does that pot? And then when I got excited about it, I started throwing huge numbers of books, and then I tried to figure out how to hack all of my Kindles so I can get them all into which turns out to be harder than I thought. But I'm like, it's not that I bought all those books. I just want to process them, yes. And have that library of those things. So anyway. Again,
being more efficient, right? If you got the tool, now you just want to be more efficient with it, right?
But some of the efficiency is playing, we
have to play.
That when you need it, how to do it. That's it's you don't figure it out on the day of the event. James, so great to have you.
This was, if my mom was watching, I would say, Mama, I've made it. Listen, I've hung out with Alex Lindsay after all these years. I appreciate you guys as well. This has been a great time.
Let's find a way to have more conversations together. This is really fun.
We'll make it happen.
All right, man. All right. And thanks so much to our producers out there watching and asking questions and keeping this conversation rolling forward. It's a really short conversation without your questions. It almost was a short conversation. I got in here and I was like, wow, there's not very many questions and not a lot were rolling in. There wasn't a lot. And I was like, but it'll work out. The producers will add more questions and it'll be great. And it was. And thanks to the panelists. Of course, we can't do this without you. Again, this is what makes the conversation work, is having all of you here in the first and the second hour. And thanks to the incredible development teams and management teams that make this happen. This is a small village that has to stand up every day, 7 days a week, to have this conversation. And we appreciate everybody's contribution. Now, the Tlaloc Traversal, if we had been doing this in person and walking around and having these questions, we would have traveled 50,000 miles. That's 80,000 kilometers. And that is 393 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. That was fun, James.
Thanks, James. That was great.
Thank you. I was wondering why Jason was with the banana, but now I makes
banana. Like, why is he holding up the banana at the end of the
I had
show?
to get my timing right. It's got to be early enough for you to think, what just happened? But right when Alex times it.
That was good. That appreciate you guys. That, and with the banana, it was great too. Oh my gosh, that was.
I don't even know how we got into bananas for scale, but it came up at some point. I don't.
My gosh, that was good.
It was Pareto, I think.
Yeah.
I bring the jazz hands. I was telling Alex. Who was it? No, the pre-show setup. I said, I'm gonna bring the jazz hands. Hopefully, it's not too early for that. And it's just me high on coffee here. It's
never too early for jazz hands here.
That's what it is, right?